is going on, everybody, and welcome to this Saturday edition of the Stochastic NHL Strategy Show. I'm your host, Josh Harris. Weird is the right word. 5-gamer last night. McDavid bageled. You needed Saros. I mean, you didn't need Saros, but he had a 27-save shutout. That was kind of like the obvious free square. I guess it's easy to say that now that he actually did it, but we did highlight Vancouver's issues without Quinn Hughes. My namesake, Josh, I won't, got to get that win. He won the $20 5 max for $1,000 using Pittsburgh 1 and Chicago, two of the lines that we didn't really like. Sometimes that's just the way the cookie crumbles, but congrats to you. Your bill will be in the mail. And can't hit the nuts tonight if you don't play. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight's 10-gamer. We got some wildly high totals. We have lots of high home totals. Some teams on some back-to-backs on the road. This is an interesting slate. Joining me, as always, looking like he's getting ready to coach a high school football semifinal. So, Cliffy, what's going on?
Yeah, that's a good point. Not a whole lot, man. Yeah, it was kind of a weird slate last night. Only 5 games, 2 were shutouts. Pittsburgh got it. Pittsburgh scored 2 goals, both on the power play. One with under 30 seconds left in the game to get that to overtime. I was telling you this morning, obviously I watched the Montreal Chicago game. Montreal's been a pretty bad team for about 3.5 years. Watching them get goalied by another team was not an experience that I remember having at any point in recent memory. Chicago got a power play goal. Habs couldn't stay out of the box. Those things happen, but Montreal back on the slate here tonight. There are some high totals. There's one big injury return that we do have to talk about. I kind of like this slate because when you have a bunch of high totals, one, it dilutes the ownership of those expensive lines, and we'll get to them. The other is it usually means reasonable or low ownership on all the mid-priced and upper tier, but not quite 23K lines too. So I find it kind of opens the slate a little bit. I don't feel like there's any one spot, even amongst the high totals, that is a must play. So I kind of do like this for the first Saturday slate of 2025.
Yep. And we should get into it. Before we do, just want to extend a thank you to you guys, as always, for supporting us for it's been just about a year now since we switched over to the affiliate program. We appreciate you all. And if you do want to go premium, you can click the link in the chat. Use promo code Stochastic15. That'll get you 15% off your first week or month of any subscription. Kick things off today with the Montreal Canadiens with a 2.5 total. Heading into Colorado, the Avs have a 4.1. This is a quick turnaround for Montreal because it's going to be 4 p.m. in Colorado when they hit. I don't know how the time zone works in the Mountain West.
I think. 4 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. my time, I guess.
Yeah. Like some parts of Colorado, some parts of Arizona, it's like they don't have daylight saving. So it's like 3 hours in the winter, 2 hours, and it's just weird. But anyway, we won't know about Patrick Laine until warmups. We don't have a ton of interest in Montreal. If Laine is back, maybe a one-off Laine, but waiting for that. And he's expensive, you know what I mean? Waiting for a 6K one-off who plays 14 minutes who might not play just seems like a chore you don't want to have on a Saturday. So Montreal won at 17.5. If you're making 150 and you happen to get them in your crunches, sure, you leave them. I'm not going out of my way to prioritize Montreal here tonight. If you are looking to power play stack Edmonton or do something with Colorado, I don't really like game stacking on a 10-game slate, but that Dvorak, Anderson, Gallagher line looked good last night. They're only 7,700. You don't need a full stack. You could take a one-off Gallagher. 2-mana Anderson Gallagher, something like that. I think like if I'm power play stacking one of the more expensive lines, that this is one of those lines I'd throw in a basket of I would look at for filler lines. But other than that, this is a Colorado 1 game for me. They are 25,000, McKinnon, Rantanen, and Lehkonen. And Lehkonen ended up not even being on the top power play unit. They moved Casey Middlestat back to the top power play. So you're not fully correlated here, but it is back-to-back on the road for Montreal. It's a really good matchup. They have a 35.2% top 2 stack. The goalie who's starting for Montreal, this is his second NHL start. He looked good in his first NHL start. This is a little bit of a tougher matchup. I'm not huge on spending half my salary on a line, especially when you have, like Edmonton on the slate. You have Vegas with the 3.7. You have Edmonton with the 3.6. There's other mid threes that I have interest in. So, I get it. It's a 4.1. In single entry, if you find a line that fits with them and you like it, you go for it. You know what I mean? If they're your guys, you play them. And I have no issue. Like, I love them here tonight. I just don't know if I'm going to commit $25,000 for a line on a 10-game slate when I can get cheaper and fit a better secondary line, yada, yada, yada. You don't need to hear me go on about it. But I do love Colorado 1. It's just a matter of if you can fit them comfortably. They're only coming in at 13.5% projected. So they have massive positive leverage. The second line, I don't have a ton of interest in Middlestat, Drew, and Colton. Like, they're fine, but I'd much rather if you want cheap exposure to the power play here, you can one-off Drouin or one-off Middlestat or take off Lehkonen and add in one of those guys. But this is a Colorado 1 game for me.
Yeah, I'll start on Montreal quickly. What I will say is that without Laine in the lineup last night, they dressed Michael Pezzetta. Pezzetta basically got no shifts in the second half of the game. They went to 11 forward, 7 defensemen. And on yesterday's show, we talked about how Montreal was starting to balance the ice time amongst the forwards. That basically went away yesterday because they basically ran an 11-7 lineup, and they didn't really trust that new hook line with Pezzetta at all. So Cole Caulfield ended up skating 19 minutes. Slafkovsky was at 19 and a half. Suzuki was at almost 22. So if Laine's not in, they might get a lot of ice time again. And since being reunited with, an improved blue line and all that, they have been good offensively. 74 shot attempts, 2.9 expected goals, 4.6 actual goals per 60 minutes. Shooting percentage is a little high, but at 12%, like we've seen, Caulfield and Suzuki shoot high percentages for a couple years now. So it's nothing that extreme. What the thing is like, if this was a month ago, I would honestly have a lot of interest in Montreal 1. It's Mackenzie Blackwood starting now for Colorado, right? In the 8 games since they acquired Blackwood, Colorado's like top 10 by expected goals against, top 10 by actual goals against at all strengths. Like, they were a good defensive team all season. They just weren't getting the goaltending. Now they're getting the goaltending. So it's just a pretty brutal matchup. Like I said, a month ago, I would have interest in Montreal 1. Now, with the way that their goaltenders are playing, I have less. I think I kind of agree with you. It's like if I was 150 maxing, like I might have 2 or 3 of them because, if there's one kind of quote weakness that Colorado has now is that the top line does kind of trade chances back and forth. You know what I mean? Like Colorado's top line, 3.2 expected goals for per 60 minutes, 2.8 against. Like, yes, well above average offensively, obviously, but also below average defensively. They do give up chances, but Blackwood is certainly an upgrade over what they had before. So not that much interest for me. In single entry Montreal, it's more a 150 thing. Like you said, it's what to do with Colorado. Now, the reason why I don't mind Colorado 1, we saw anybody that watched the Montreal-Chicago game last night and anybody that's watched Montreal at all this year, we've seen one of the big problems. When we talked about it on yesterday's show, Montreal's penalty kill has improved, but they still take a lot of penalties. They took 4 against the Blackhawks last night. Blackhawks usually don't draw a lot of power plays. They even gave up a 5-on-3. If they give Colorado's power play 4 or 5 opportunities, I don't really like their chances of keeping the goals against down. So, yeah, that Avs top line, 3.7 goals scored per 60 minutes at 5-on-5, perfectly correlated on the power play. Probably, especially with Nichushkin out, they're going to have to lean on those top guys quite a bit. So, at least 20 minutes for all of them, if not 21 to 23 minutes. I really do like Colorado 1. It should be noted, they do lead the top stacks by top 2 percentage here tonight, and it's not even close. They're at 35%. No other line is at 15%. And they'll come in with double-digit ownership because it's such a good matchup, but especially on the power play. But if I'm paying over 20K, like if I'm paying a hefty price for a line here tonight, Colorado, Tampa Bay, Edmonton power play stack, I'm probably playing Colorado. Am I going to do it in a single entry? Probably not. But yeah, they are in a great power play spot. They do catch the backup goalie. They're not going to have to face Montembeault. Dobes is supposed to be a good prospect, but there's a difference between being a good prospect in the AHL and actually performing at the NHL. So I really do like Colorado 1. I also think like you, like it's just too hefty of a price.
Yeah, I mean, if you can get comfortable with a lineup that you have with them, you play them, right? Like, I think they're my favorite line of the night. It's just a question of, can I fit them with guys that aren't fourth liners, you know what I mean? And that's something you'll have to do.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about filler lines that you can get to across the slate, but St. Louis has reasonably cheap-ish lines, or at least certain stacks you can make. Calgary, Seattle, like there are spots that you can go to. We'll get to them. That's why I don't hate the idea of playing Colorado tonight. I just usually almost never play a 25K line in single entry.
Yeah. I'm kind of the same way, but this is screaming for me to try to figure it out. But, it's a big slate. So Detroit Red Wings with a 2.3 total heading into Winnipeg. The Jets have a 3.2. I'm out on the Wings in single entry in MME if you get like a one-off Larkin, one-off Kane, one-off DeBrincat. That stuff's fine. Like that line with Veleno has been fine. But I'm not paying $15K to full stack them going into Winnipeg. That's just bad for business. So one-offs on Detroit. Winnipeg is more interesting here, and Winnipeg 1's getting expensive. They're up to $22,000, Connor Scheifele and Velarde. $3,000 cheaper than Colorado 1, but their top 2 stacks 11.8%, but they're only getting 2% projected because of that price, right? But the way Winnipeg matches up at home, they're going to see middle 6 to bottom 6 matchups of the Wings, and there's nothing there. There is nothing there, and it's a really good power play spot, and Winnipeg 1 is one of the more power play dependent top lines, I would say. Like their numbers are fine at 5-on-5, but they do more of their damage on the power play. So I do really like Winnipeg 1 here. That extra $3,000 savings from Colorado 1 will help a lot. Do I like Winnipeg more than Colorado? No. But that $3,000 would sway me in the direction of Winnipeg. Winnipeg 2, again, Winnipeg 2 at home is really their third line. So outside of Ehlers one off there, I'm probably out on Winnipeg 2. If you need a cheap filler, it would be Winnipeg 3. Lowry, Iafallo, Niederreiter. But, this is a Winnipeg 1 game.
Yeah, I have no interest in the Wings here. Just a bad matchup against Winnipeg. Also note the Wings open with a 2.14 total and it's down to 2.3. Like it's just, I don't really think I have interest in them in a single entry or 3 or 5 max or anything like that. This is a Winnipeg game for me, obviously. Now, your point about the matchups, I think, is a good one because Veleno and Larkin, like Veleno's not bad defensively. Like I actually think he can help them defensively as opposed to some players that they put up there like Patrick Kane or Vladimir Tarasenko or something like that. I just don't think he does anything for them offensively. So it would be a bad matchup for Scheifele and them if they were going to get that matchup, but they're not going to. They're going to get the matchup against, Kopp and Kane or the third line or whatever. So those are great matchups for Winnipeg's top line. The Detroit penalty kill has been getting better. But the thing is like they were so bad. It's like for like the first 25 games of the season, is that getting better still doesn't mean good. They're still below average. I'm not really worried about that penalty kill improving a little bit. So this is a really good power play matchup. They have a 3.2 total. They have almost no ownership. I do think they make a nice pivot away from Colorado. Like you said, if you don't want to pay that extra $3K, just going down to them, because 2.4% ownership, it's nothing. And these guys, Velarde doesn't play a ton, but he still plays 18 to 19 minutes. Connor and Scheifele will probably be over 20. I was trying to see if they'd been slowing down at all after a hot start. Over the last 15 games, they're at 3.5 expected goals, 4.1 actual goals per 60 minutes. Like they're definitely not slowing down. I really do like Winnipeg one here. By top two stacks, they're number 3 on the board over at Stochastic behind Colorado and Tampa Bay. And obviously, they're the cheapest of the 3. Should be noted they're coming in with a fraction of the ownership of Colorado. I really, really do like Winnipeg one here. I think it's a great matchup, basically at all strengths for that top line. What worries me is leaving Ehlers off because he has been kind of an integral part of the power play. I don't think that's a big surprise to anybody. And that's why I'd almost be more inclined to make it kind of a power play stack than I would be just to stack the top line. Like I would have a real hard time leaving Ehlers off, even if he only gets 15 to 16 minutes. Like if that power play does go nuts, like he's probably going to be involved. So I think I might be more inclined almost to power play stack the forwards than just stack the top line. But yeah, Winnipeg won. They're number 3 by Stochastic's top 2 stacks. By my personal numbers, they're number 2 on the board behind Colorado. So they're just one of the best spots in the night. And like I said, if you want to save that 3K over Colorado, I think this is the spot to do it.
Yep, I do agree with you there. The Boston Bruins with a 2.7 total heading into Toronto. The Leafs have a 3.2. Austin Matthews is back. Toronto going Matthews, Marner, Nyes, Nylander, Tavares, Pacioretty, McMahon, Domi, Robertson. Boston going Pasternak, Marchand, Lindholm, Zacha, Geeky, Coyle. Then whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I don't like Lindholm with Pasternak. They haven't worked at any point this season. They are fully correlated. It's a decent power play spot, but they're 18,600. You know what I mean? They're in a price range that I have trouble prioritizing them. We'll talk about Vegas later. Their top line's 18,100. The Nashville top line's 19K. Our Columbus Blue Jackets are 18,400. Even the Toronto second line is 19,500 in that price range. If the Oilers for some reason leave Connor fucking Brown on the top line, they're 17,700. So it's really hard to prioritize Boston one here at that price. They're just, there's lines that I like that are a little bit more expensive, and there's lines that I like that are cheaper. They are fully correlated. Again, the Leafs do struggle on the penalty kill. In that sense, they're fine. But Lindholm and Pasternak, they had to be broken apart in the beginning of the season because they were atrocious together. They were creating nothing. So that's really the only line on Boston that I have interest in. Like Zacha, Geeky, Coyle doesn't interest me. The bottom 6 certainly doesn't interest me. Like, I guess they're fine in MME, obviously. Like, they have an 8.9% top 2 stack. I just worry that they haven't been good together, and maybe, unless they do damage on the power play, they're not going to get there 5-on-5. And banking on the Boston Bruins power play isn't as bad as banking on the Flyers power play, but it's not like you're banking on, the Columbus power play, which has been excellent. So I don't particularly love Boston here. Interestingly enough, there is not a lot of ownership on Toronto here, and it is a tough matchup in the sense that Boston has gotten a lot better defensively, but Jeremy Swayman still has a save percentage under 9. He's gotten better. Don't get me wrong. Top line 21,700, 2.1% projected ownership. Like, honestly, like, I like the Toronto top line, but at that point, I'm finding the $300 and going to Winnipeg 1. Toronto 2 is interesting for me because they have been excellent this season. They're going to avoid that top line. They're going to see middle 6 matchups, which they're fine, but they're not great. You know what I mean? I don't mind them at 2% projected, but again, they're also in that price range where it's like 19,500. Like, at that point, I'm just going to go find a way to spend up to Winnipeg or spend down to Vegas. You know what I mean? So really, it would be the McMahon, Domi, Robertson line for me in the basket of I'm power play stacking a team. I'm playing Colorado. Like, that line has been very, very good since they've been put together. They play their 13, 14, 15 minutes. They're 8,800. You know what I mean? It's not the best matchup, but at 8,800, beggars can't be choosers, and I'd throw them into the basket with some other really cheap fillers.
Yeah,
but, I'm not super high on this game.
No, sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah, no. The point about Swayman, we mentioned on the last show, right? His first 14 games of the season, he gave up 47 goals against, like almost 3.5 per game. His most recent 14 games, he's given up 32 in 14 games played, under 2.5 per game, and 8 of those 32 came in that game where they got bombed out in Winnipeg. The other 13 games, he's allowed 3 or fewer goals in all of them, and I think like 5 or 6 out of those 13, he's allowed 1 or fewer. Like, he's genuinely been a lot better over the last 6 weeks or so. Now, I don't like splitting up, even small goalie samples like that, but we have seen Swayman be so good for so long that I have to think that maybe it was just a bad 6-week run for him to start the season or whatever it was. Like, I'm out on Toronto 1. If this was the line, if this was this time a year ago, even with Swayman playing a lot better last year, I would kind of be considering it. The thing is, it's the Matthews factor, right? It's like career low shooting percentage, career low on ice shooting percentage of 5-on-5. The power play has been worse with him, and we've seen him have injury struggles all season. And as you mentioned, I think it was on Thursday's show, he outright said it's an injury that he's going to be dealing with for the rest of the season. There's speculation that it's his back. We don't exactly know what it is, but like, if I'd rather pay the $22K for Winnipeg, knowing that all 3 guys are healthy at home in a good matchup, than the 21,700 for Toronto for a line that's not even perfectly correlated, playing a Boston team that is really good defensively. So I'm out on Toronto 1. Toronto 2 is a little interesting at 19,500. You're right. They have been really good this year. 3.8 expected goals, 4.4 actual goals per 60 minutes. Up until Matthews left the lineup, which put Pontus Holmberg and David Kampf as Nylander centers. Nylander was averaging like 3.5 shots per game. Pacioretty has been getting a little bit more ice time. 19,500 is really expensive though. And it's like, if I'm going to pay, let's say, over 18K for a stack, I'm probably just going to go up to Winnipeg, or, we're going to get to like Columbus and Vegas a little bit later. Like, those interest me a little bit more. I kind of agree with you that Toronto 3 might be my favorite line. They're not my favorite line. Like, they're not projected for the highest points or anything like that. It's just that you're right. They'll get their 13 to 15 minutes. Domi and McMahon have been really good together this season. 60 shot attempts, 32 shots per 60 minutes in their time together. They are one of those stacks that fit with Colorado, Edmonton power play, those types of things. So just judging off the rest of the slate and the rest of the matchup, I kind of like that Toronto 3 line a little bit if you're playing one of those super expensive stacks elsewhere. On the Boston side, like, you're right. The only line I would actually have interest in is Pasternak, Marchand, and Lindholm. Now, I don't like Lindholm being there. I do think Marchand and Pasternak are kind of good enough to carry him. Like, it'd be like, a few years ago when Lindholm was the center for Kachuk and Goodrow. It's one of those situations, but also it's not that great of a matchup. And the power play is still terrible. You know what I mean? It's actually kind of wild that they haven't really tried. Like, they were earlier in the season, but since they fired Montgomery, they haven't really tried anything new, even though the power play is still pretty bad. So, like, until the power play kind of turns itself around, I'm not going to stack Boston. Like, at 18,600, it's, again, in that price range where I'd rather go, I'd honestly just pay the extra 3,500, go play, or 3,400, go play Winnipeg, or just, another line in that price range like Vegas or Columbus or something like that. So I'm going to be honest. I think Toronto 3 is the only thing I personally have interest in playing here tonight in like single entry or 5 max or something like that.
Yeah, no, I agree. And yeah, the Boston power play sucks. Like, I'm surprised they haven't given Lowry the keys just to try. Like,
they did give him a few games and they didn't do anything, but it's not like they didn't give him like 3-week trial. You know what I mean? That's the thing. So it's true. It's true.
Oh boy, what a game we have here. Minnesota Wild with a 2.3 total heading into Carolina. The Hurricanes have a 3.3. We were talking about this game this morning because the last 2 Carolina home games were against Carolina and the Islanders, and they sent out the Aho line against the Hughes line and the Nelson line. It makes sense that Stahl would see Nico Hischier because they're a very analytical organization. It doesn't make sense to send him out against the Nelson line, but I have to assume that Stahl is going to go out against the top line here tonight of Boldy, Zuccarello, Rossi. I don't have a ton of interest in them anyway, and then you look to see that they're getting over 5% projected, and I'm just pretty much out on them. Joel Eriksson, Hartman, Johansson at 6%. Like, they'll probably see a fair bit of that Aho Jarvis Roslovic matchup, which is a good matchup, but like 6%, I get it because you can fit them with Colorado. I just don't want to stack a 6% line with a 2.3 road total. You know what I mean? So I'm out on Minnesota and single entry. If you happen to get those guys in your MME mix, I'm happy for you, but I'm not going to do it. You can leave it. I don't try to X out anything unless you're getting like 27%, Minnesota 4, you know what I mean? Unless you're doing something wrong. But Carolina's the least interesting here. Marnik Stahl Carrier is a line I would throw into the basket of Toronto 3s, those cheap fillers, because they're going to match up against that Zuccarello line. That Zuccarello line has not been great in a 50-minute sample defensively. That Stahl line, if they had any finish, would be scoring a ton. Like, they have, I think it's something ridiculous, like 3.7 expected goals on the season. They just haven't. They just shoot like 2-3%. That's kind of just what happens. But for a line that you want to fit with a power play stack or Colorado, again, Carolina 3 into that basket. Carolina 1 is a little interesting because at least Aho and Jarvis play well together. For some reason, that line with Roslovic hasn't really been working. It was a lot better when it was Svechnikov and Roslovic, not Jarvis and Roslovic. It's kind of weird. But I don't mind Carolina 1 at 16.5 here. You do get 2 of the guys on the top power play unit. Minnesota's penalty kill is just an abomination. It needs to be studied. So I don't mind Carolina 1. Carolina 2, just like, if you want to one-off Netchus, you want to one-off Svechnikov because of the power play, that's fine. But like with Kotkaniemi there, they don't do shit at 5-on-5. So really the only line in this game would be Carolina 1. And I don't mind Carolina 3 in that basket if you need a really, really cheap filler.
Yeah, I don't have any interest in Minnesota. I mean, we'll see what happens in future games, but just as a blanket statement, I just don't have a lot of interest in them until Kaprizov returns. For me, this is the Carolina side. Like, yeah, I don't really like Nature's Svechnikov, Kotkaniemi. They're up to 95 minutes together, 1.4 expected goals, 0.6 actual goals. Like,
how's that possible? Like, it doesn't make sense.
I don't know, man. It's pretty bad. And the other thing is Jack Drury's back for Carolina, and there were times before Drury got hurt where they were using him as the second line center, and Kotkaniemi was down on the fourth line. So with that second line not really playing that well, I wonder if there's a pretty short leash on Kotkaniemi now that Drury's back. And if this is a 1-0 Minnesota game halfway through the second, do they just move Drury up? Like, that's another thing that worries me. So in single entry and 5 max and things like that, the only line that I really have interest in is Aho, Jarvis, and Roslovic. Now, it's weird because they're not creating the expected goals that they were with Svechnikov on the top line, but they have been scoring. Now, that's shooting over 16%. And if you watch the Carolina Hurricanes over the last 5 years, you know that a line on Carolina shooting anywhere near that high is definitely going to regress. But Jarvis and Aho play like 19 to 20 minutes. As you mentioned, the Minnesota penalty kill is very, very bad. Now, they don't take a ton of penalties, but even with Ty Smith there, the Carolina power play is still going pretty well. So this is a pretty good power play matchup for the Hurricanes. You get Aho, Jarvis on the top power play. Roslovic is just having an unbelievable season. And I would be pretty hesitant to leave him off for the sole reason that he's only 3,900. You know what I mean? Like, if he was priced up to like 5,200 or something like that, which like he has been in the high fours, I think at times, I would be reconsidering. But at under 4K on DraftKings, like, I think it's perfectly fine. I do have a little bit of interest in Carolina 1 here. The other reason is like, if you're looking for a mid-price stack, let's say somewhere in that like 15 to 18K range, you're looking at like Montreal, something from Minnesota, Buffalo on the road, like the Kings maybe, and we'll get to the Kings, or a super high owned Dallas. Like, there's just not a lot in that price range, which is why I don't mind Carolina 1 here, because in that price range, they're near the top of the board. So I do like Carolina 1. I do think the matchups are fine at 5-on-5, especially, with the injuries that Minnesota has. Gustafson's in net. That kind of sucks, but Carolina 1 is definitely not close to my favorite line in that price range, but I do think they are playable. And I would probably just full stack them. I wouldn't worry about leaving Roslovic off or anything.
Yeah, I would definitely full stack them as well, especially with all the uncertainty with Necas and Svechnikov. Like, if they're with Kotkaniemi, they suck. If Drury moves up, it's a little bit better, but you can't bank on that. St. Louis Blues with a 3 total heading into Columbus. Our Blue Jackets, 2.9 total. St. Louis back-to-back on the road here. Did they win yesterday? I can't remember.
Yeah, man. They were at home to Ottawa. Now, I was watching the Montreal game mostly. I was flipping to the Ottawa game. Ottawa looked terrible again. Back-to-back games where they looked awful. But, yeah, St. Louis won 4-0.
Yeah,
Brandon Saad. We slandered Brandon Saad, remember? No goals, 2 assists in 19 games, and then he gets a natural hat trick.
Yeah, we're good. We're good for that. I'm going to start slandering the Mega Millions on the Powerball. Probably doesn't work the same, but Columbus 1 is up to 18,400 now. Monahan, Marchenko, Voronkov, 9% top 2 stacks, 6.4% projected ownership. I like them here. The issue is, like, as I just hit puberty for the second time in my life, the issue here is twofold. One, since St. Louis got their new coach, they've been better defensively. 2, for $300 cheaper, I can play Vegas 1, right? Against a Buffalo matchup that's much better. Yes, Tanner Pearson's on the top line, but he's also min-price, right? So, like, I have no issues with Columbus 1 here. I'd much rather play Columbus 1 than Boston 1. I just don't know if I'd rather play Columbus 1 than Vegas 1 here. So I have no issues playing them, and I much prefer them at 6.4% projected than the other night when they're projected at like 13% and came in at 25%. They burned a lot of people, so they should be around 6-7% here tonight. I like them. I don't think if I'm in that 17 and 19K range that I can prioritize them over Vegas, but they will definitely be in the conversation. The rest of Columbus, I don't have a ton of interest in. A one-off Ken Johnson's fine since he's on the power play, but the Blues don't take a bunch of penalties, so it really would be Columbus 1 or bust. The St. Louis side is a little bit more interesting. I don't have a ton of interest in Thomas Buchnevich-Saad. You can give a shit for saying what we said about Saad and then him scoring a hat trick, but that's just anything can happen in hockey. You have to look at the big picture, and Saad before that had 19 shots on goal in 21 games or something ridiculous like that. So it's just it doesn't really do much there. And they're going to see the Monahan, Marchenko, Voronkov line, which has been their best line at both ends of the ice. I have no problem going back to Kyrou, Holloway, Schenn. They're fully correlated on the quote-unquote second unit. This is a good power play matchup. Yeah, they won't play, they won't get a minute, 10 seconds of the power play, but they'll get, 40 seconds or so, and it's still something. At least Kyrou's their best offensive player. They're going to see, the Sillinger line or the Fantilli line. Nothing to be scared at there. Werenski won't be on the ice for a lot of that either. So I do like the Kyrou, Holloway, Schenn line at 13.8. The ownership's a bit high at 8.2% projected. But again, when there's filler lines in good matchups, they're always going to be negatively correlated. So Columbus 1, St. Louis 2 for me.
Yeah, I'm going to start on the St. Louis side. I don't mind that Schenn, Holloway, Kyrou line. One of the big reasons, as you mentioned, is they're not going to see much of Sean Monahan. That Sean Monahan usually goes out against the other opposing top lines. And Columbus is night and day defensively with the top line on and off the ice. With them on the ice, or with them off the ice, their expected goals against goes up something like 20%. Their actual goals against doubles at 5-on-5. Schenn, Kyrou, and Holloway have been really good together. 65 shot attempts, 2.9 expected goals, 3.5 actual goals per 60 minutes. They're all perfectly correlated on the second power play unit as well. The other thing is if you're looking in a cheap-ish range, let's say under 14K, there's Los Angeles, there's really not a lot else. You're looking at Seattle, Winnipeg or Detroit depth lines, Utah on the road, in Dallas. There's just not a lot there that I really like. So, other than Los Angeles, I kind of like this line in that price range. So if you need a sub 14K line, a $12,500 to $14,000 line on DraftKings tonight, I think Kyrou, Holloway, and Schenn is near the top. We do like Columbus. The second and third lines are still pretty bad defensively, and it's not like the power play or the penalty kill is great, and they are at least perfectly correlated on the power play. That's it's still a perfectly correlated line that's going to skate around 17 minutes in very, very good 5-on-5 matchups that is under 14K on DraftKings, and that has played well together. So I do kind of like St. Louis 2 here for that price range. Columbus 1 is still my favorite line in this game. St. Louis has been a lot better under their new coach. I would also say I was looking at their last 10 games. Their last 10 games include Ottawa, Chicago, Buffalo, Nashville, Detroit, San Jose. It's there has been a few easy games in there. So it's not Columbus is a great team or anything, but that top line has still been great offensively. One thing that does concern me is that the coach said that they might go back to a 12-6 lineup. They have been running 11-7, and when they were running 11-7, Marchenko, Voronkov, and Monahan were all playing between 19 and 21 minutes. It's oftentimes 20 plus for all three. If they go back to 12-6, I worry that it's back down to Monahan at 20, Marchenko at 18, and Voronkov at 17. That's the one thing that concerns me. But if I'm looking for a line under 18K, man, like I guess there's Carolina. We'll get to the Kings in a second. Maybe the Kings top line. There's around 18K and lower. Like there's just not a ton there. Like I agree. I do like Vegas in a nutshell better. But we'll get to that game. But Tanner Pearson, man, like holy shit. Like he wasn't good enough for the Montreal Canadiens to re-sign. Like, can we just kind of like be real about this? And it's funny, I slander him like one day after I slander Brandon Saad, and Brandon Saad gets a natural hat trick. So, put Tanner Pearson on the radar now, I guess. But we don't know if that line is A, going to stay together, or B, is going to be any good. We do know that this Columbus top line has been really good. I really do like Columbus one here. I'd rather play them than Nashville. I'd rather play them than Toronto. I'd rather play them than Boston. So I'd rather play them than Montreal. Like there's just, other than Vegas, there's just really not a lot there that I like until you get all the way up to Winnipeg. So for me, I'm still really considering Columbus one here. Like I do think that they're still near the top of the pile in that price range.
Slandering an original member of that 70s line. Capital punishment. Capital punishment. That line won me so much money back in the day. Carter, Toffoli, Pearson. Whew, they were fun. Utah Soakers, 2.8 total. Heading into Dallas, the Stars have a 3.6. We were both kind of surprised at their total, 3.6. I don't really know why. Like Utah, it happens. Like there's certain teams that Vegas just hates, and I think Utah's one of them. But they're really underrated at 5 at 5-on-5. I wouldn't say they're an excellent 5-on-5 team defensively, but they are much better than advertised, I think, at 5v5. And that Robertson Hintz the Donoff line is going to see a fair bit of that Keller Schmaltz Hayton line. And that line, has been excellent for seasons now. They have a 325-minute sample this season, 2.2 expected goals against per 60.
Just want to jump in real quick. I was looking at how the matchups for Dallas have changed, like with their injuries. I did notice with that when they played Ottawa, they were sending out Johnston and Ben against the Tkachuk line. So I do wonder if it's going to be Johnston and Ben going out against Utah one here.
Certainly possible, and that would give me another reason not to want to play that 15.5% projected Johnston, Duchesne, Ben. Because, I get it in a small sample. They've been excellent. But if they're going to see that Hayton, Schmaltz, Keller line, I don't want anything to do with a 15.5% projected line at $15,000. You know what I mean? At that point, I'd rather play Keller, Schmaltz, and Hayton at $14,200 for a seventh of the ownership. 3.3 expected goals for, 2.2 against this season. Ottinger's, this is a tough matchup for Utah, and Ottinger's been pretty good this season, but, I'd rather play Keller, Schmaltz, Hayton than Robertson, Hintz, Donoff, and you're saving $100. That Johnston, Duchesne, Ben line has been excellent, and, I initially really did want to play them tonight, but 15.5% on a 10-game slate in a tougher than anticipated 5-on-5 matchup. And the Dallas power play hasn't been great. Yes, they've gotten better. That doesn't mean they're rolling. You know what I mean? So, they're fine. That ownership is fine. It's not to the point where it's oh, this feels like awful chalk, but it's do I really want to play a 15.5% projected line when I can state multiple reasons why I don't want to play them? You know what I mean? It's a lot easier if it's a bad team, like we talked about yesterday, bad team chalk, like Chicago, and that kind of burned us, but anything can happen. This is a good line. It's just a tougher matchup than anticipated. You can do what you want with them in single entry. I think I'm out. And honestly, I don't love Utah, but I think I prefer the Utah side just because of the price. Keller, Schmaltz, Hayton, 14.2. Genther, Cooley, McBain, 12.9. That's where I'd go. I don't think I'd prioritize them in single entry, but I do prefer the Utah side a little bit just because of price.
Yeah. The Utah top line, that Keller, Hayden, Schmaltz line, they have not been sliding at all. They were really good at the start of the season. They took Hayden off for a couple weeks and then put him back on, and they've been really good since again. Like they're I was looking just the last 20 games, 2 expected goals against, 0.8 actual goals against per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. Not only are they producing well offensively, they've been great defensively. That's a pretty bad matchup for Johnston and Duchesne. That's the one thing that really concerns me. The thing is I'm trying to figure out why it's a 3.6 total. I think a big reason is that Utah does take a ton of penalties. They've been taking a lot of penalties all season. Just over the last 5 weeks, third most in the league. Dallas has been drawing more power plays. The Dallas power play has been the top unit has been bad. Now, they have been getting better. Even when they've gotten better, they've still been below average for a top power play unit. It's like 8 goals per 60 at 5-on-4. Like the league average for a top unit is at about 8.5. So even as they've improved over the last 10, 15 games or whatever it was, they're still below average. So, but like, you know, a below average power play can get there like 1 out of 4 times because Utah does take so many penalties. So like if Dallas can get like 4 or 5, who knows, 6 power plays or something, then yeah, maybe they can really do some damage. But at 15.5% for a power play that's not been good in a 5-on-5 matchup that's pretty bad, I'd honestly rather go play Robertson, Hintz, Dadonov. And it's probably the first time this season I've said I'd prefer to play an Evgeny Dadonov line. They've actually been fine, believe it or not, in their sample. 2.7 expected goals for, 3.7 actual goals for. Robertson has like 30 shots in his last 10 games or something like that. He's started to come alive. Rope Hintz has started to come alive. If the power play gets there, those 2 guys are on the top power play unit as well. And they get those second and third line matchups against Utah where I think they can be exploited a bit at even strength. So I don't mind Robertson, Hintz, Dadonov. And at 14,300, they're in that price range where, you know, if you don't want to go play St. Louis or maybe the Kings or maybe, like a chalky Calgary or something like that, just go play them. That Dallas Hintz, Robertson, Dadonov line, ownership is only 5%. And considering it's a 3.6 total and 2 out of the 3 guys are also on the top power play unit, 5.3% seems pretty reasonable to me. So I like the Robertson, Hintz, Dadonov line here tonight. I don't hate Utah. A single entry, I don't think I can get there. Like, Dallas just doesn't take very many penalties. The penalty kill is great. Besides that, Ottinger's largely been fine this season. So I'm kind of out on Utah and single entry. For me, it's a Robertson Hintz line. I don't hate playing Johnson, Duchesne, Ben. They have been good. They're not expensive. Johnson probably would get the most ice time of any of Dallas's forwards. So I don't hate playing them, but at a third of the ownership, I'd probably just rather go play Robertson, Hintz, Dadonov.
Yeah, and Dadonov's issues really aren't offensively. He's just, lost the step. So, he's a little slower. But these fools have been used to playing with Grandpa Joe for a few years, so it makes sense that they've been playing fine. Pouring out for the homie Grandpa Joe. Can't believe he didn't win a Stanley Cup. That is a scene. But anyway, Tampa Bay Lightning with a 2.9 total heading into LA. The Kings have a 3.1. The LA Kings are the only team in the NHL at 5-on-5 who have lower expected goals against per 60 than 2. They are meat grinders at 5-on-5. I'm out on Tampa. I was out on Tampa anyway because their top line's 26,800. That's just bonkers. If you happen to get a little bit, if you're playing 150 and you get 2 or 3 Hagel, Sorelli, Geekies, yeah. Kucherov won off an MME, sure. It's Kucherov. You know what I mean? The Kings can be had on the penalty kill. It's usually goalie related, but, you can't trust those aliens sometimes in net. But for the most part, out on Tampa, Kings have three playable lines at 3 different price points. If you're looking for a mid-range build, you could go I don't know, Columbus 1, LA 1. Kempe Kopitar, Turcotte, that interests me. They're too expensive to fit in with the Winnipegs and the Colorados, obviously. So, in a mid-range build, I don't mind Kempe Kopitar, Turcotte. like, let's not pretend Tampa Bay is a good defensive team, especially that point line. They trade chances. So I do like LA1. LA2, Dano, LaFerriere, Fiala, they have been very good together. They're priced as a filler. You can't fit them with Colorado, but you can fit them with Winnipeg. They will see some of that Hagel, Sorelli, Geeky matchup, but, they've been sliding a little bit, and, that LA line has been very, very good. So I don't mind them as a filler. If you need another line to throw in that super cheap basket to fit in a power play stack or Colorado, I don't mind that Fogle, Byfield, Jeannot line. So I don't know if I'd outright prioritize anything on the LA side in single entry, but there are 3 playable lines at 3 different price points.
Yeah, on the Tampa side, like in a 150, if you have a couple Lightning, I think that's fine. Just because hockey is random enough where the Kings goalie has a real bad night, maybe they can get there. But in a single entry, like the Gavrikov Mikey Anderson pairing at home this season, 245 minutes, 0.6 goals against per 60 minutes. That's the shutdown matchup that they have. Los Angeles' issues earlier in the season was taking penalties. Over the last 5 weeks, they're at 2.2 times shorthanded per game. It's one of the lowest rates in the league. Over their last 25 games, fewest goals against per minute of any team, second lowest expected goals against per minute of any team. Like, this is just an absolutely brutal matchup for Tampa at that price in a single entry. It's just a hard pass for me. I'll take the savings. If Winnipeg's going to come in at like 2 or 3%, I'll just take the savings and go play Winnipeg at home to Detroit instead. On the Kings side, like, I do think the Kings have 3 playable lines here. I will say, watch out. This is one of those we're going to have to watch out for warm-ups things, because they did send Andre Lee back to the AHL. I saw that. Trevor Moore and Trevor Lewis were both skating. They had been injured. They were both skating at practice yesterday or the day before. At least one, if not both, could be back here tonight. I think given the way that the Kings are playing, they're just going to come in on the 4th line, and then if something goes wrong, then they'll move up. So I'm not expecting any line changes, but just something to keep an eye on. The reason why I think the Kings have 3 playable lines is because, one, Kopitar, Kempe, Turcotte have been really, really good together this season. 3.1 expected goals for per 60 in 185 minutes, 4 actual goals for per 60. I was looking to see why they were playing so well, and I was looking at some of the tracking data from all 3 zones, and it's not a big sample for Turcotte yet because he's missed some games. He doesn't play a ton of minutes typically. It was only like 100 minutes for him. But his high danger pass rate was like double the team average for the forwards. Like, he's basically turned into what Quentin Byfield was in the second half of the season last year for the Kings. So if he's helping them create a lot more dangerous chances, and considering that 3.1 goals per 60 is pretty high for that top line, I'd say he is. I really do like that Kings top line here. Kopitar and Kempe both on the top power play unit. It's the only line that they have with 2 guys on the top power play. Tampa Bay's penalty kill is pretty good, so it's not a massive deal, but it does kind of matter. So I do like Kempe, Kopitar, Turcotte just as a full stack here. I think Fiala, Laferriere, Danault is also playable. The reason why they're also playable is because they've been so goddamn good together. 70 shot attempts, 3.4 expected goals, 3.2 actual goals per 60 minutes of 5-on-5. Those are all well above average numbers. Fiala's on the top power play. Danault and Fiala have been playing like 18, 19 minutes. Laferriere might not get as much, but he'll still get in the mid-teens, if not higher. So, like, they're playable and they're $2,000 cheaper. And then you get to Fogle, Byfield, and Jeannot, who haven't been as good as the other 2 lines, but have been scoring. And Byfield's on the top power play unit, and Fogle is having a good season. And they're under 10K. So if you're playing Colorado, Edmonton power play stack, those types of things, they're one of those lines that you can put in with them. So the Kings have 3 playable lines here. I like the Kempe, Kopitar, Turcotte line the best. They have the highest top 2 stack percentage. They're only coming in at 1% ownership. I think they're fine to full stack because Turcotte has played so well with them. But Los Angeles has 3 playable lines here, depending on what you want to do with your lineup.
Yeah. 3 different lines, 3 different price points. Nashville Predators with a 3 total heading into Calgary. The Flames also have a 3 total. Nashville won in Vancouver last night, 3-0. They scored 2 empty net goals. I see that Forsberg. It's like This team pisses me off so much. Forsberg, Marchessault, Stamkos, 19,000, 8.6% projected ownership. Like, if you want to play them, like, good for you, but they're going to get the Backlund, Coleman, Coronado matchup. It's Dustin Wolf in net. This team's back-to-back in the road. There are a bevy of teams of lines that I'd rather play instead of them. I'm out on Nashville. Calgary is interesting because Nashville's back-to-back on the road, so it's probably going to be Justice and Newen tonight, and that is a very steep drop-off from UC Saros. But, like, I don't really want to play chalk Backlund Coleman. They're 13%. Kadri Huberdeau's 10%. Honestly, I think the line I would want to play is Zari Sharangovich Peltier. They're 9,800, 2% projected, but they have been excellent. And they're going to get middle six matchups of the Predators. Like, okay, cool. They're going to avoid Yossi for the most part. Nice. They're not my favorite Calgary line, but if you throw in ownership, you get Zari and Sharangovich on the power play. Like, I don't want to play a 13% Coleman Backlund line. I like them, but at that ownership and that price, like, they need to score. You know what I mean? They create a ton. They don't shoot at a high percentage. Kadri Huberdeau Pospisil, I do like as well, but 10% and 13,600. You can't fit them with Colorado. Sharangovich, Zari, Peltier fit with everybody. They're coming in at 2% projected. You get two guys on the top power play unit. They get very good matchups. So that's probably where I'd be on Calgary. I have a tough time playing chalk Calgary because, let's be honest, Calgary isn't a great team. So I'm going to go to the line that has been playing very well together with two guys on the top power play unit, and they're getting the least ownership.
Yeah, I don't have interest in Nashville. Honestly, at that price range, I'm just going to play Columbus. I'm a Blue Jacket slappy. What can I say? On the Calgary side, the case for me for playing Backlund, Coleman, Coronado, yes, there's a ton of ownership at 13%. It's kind of ridiculous, honestly. I'm not playing them personally. What I will say, I think the case is like if you're looking at the lines under 13K, it's like Utah on the road, Colorado 2, Buffalo depth, Seattle depth, Minnesota 2, Columbus 2. Like, there's just not a ton there. You know what I mean? So, and they have been good, and they do get ice time, right? Like, those three guys have typically been like at least 17, if not 18 to 20 minutes for a few weeks now. So they do get good ice time. They are facing Justin and Newen. I think that's the case for them, but I'd rather go play the Kadri line. That Kadri, Huberdeau, Pospisil line, 2.8 expected goals, 4.1 actual goals. Kadri and Huberdeau, 18 and 19 minutes. Kadri's been shooting a ton lately. They're coming in with less ownership, and they're only $700 more expensive. I think if you want to, I think you can leave Pospisil off, but then it just raises the average cost of the stack. So I would probably just leave him on. I'm going to be honest. I would probably rather go play Los Angeles, like that Fiala-Deneau line, than I would playing Calgary here. Maybe even St. Louis, you know what I mean? Like, I just think that there are lines in that specific price range, like Dallas, like that we just talked about, the Robertson Hintz line. There are just other lines in that price range I'd rather play. So I think there is a case for playing Coleman. I do like the Kadri line the best. They're just behind the Coleman line by top 2 stack percentage here tonight, but they are coming in with less ownership. It's just, for me personally, I just think there are other lines in that price range to play. I kind of agree that Sharangovich, Zari, Peltier is the only interesting one, and it's because you can fit them with Colorado, you can fit them with an Edmonton power play, you can fit them with Tampa Bay if you're playing Tampa Bay. So they're kind of in that Toronto bin for me, even though they're a different price range, where I think the top two lines in a nutshell are fine, but there are other lines in the price range of the top two lines I'd rather play. So I'd rather dip down to the super cheap third line if I'm playing a super expensive Edmonton, Colorado, that type thing.
Yeah, Calgary chalk never feels good. It's not as bad as like Islander chalk or stuff like that.
I mean, hey, listen, man, we slandered Chicago chalk last night and look what happened.
Yeah, but they suck. So it's fine. Woo, Buffalo. What a train wreck of a team. Organization, city, wings. Buffalo Sabres with a 2.8 total heading into Vegas. The Golden Knights have a 3.7. I know Cliff is excited to talk about Tanner Pearson here. They took Victor Olofsson off the top line and put Tanner Pearson up there. He's min price. Eichel, Stone, Pearson, 18,100, 11.6% projected ownership, 11.6% top two stack, 11.8% projected ownership. So right on par there. Stone and Eichel have good numbers together. 2.5 expected goals, 4.7 actual. Like, if you took Victor Olofsson off the power play, he'd be Tanner Pearson. So, what? Victor Olofsson's a shot bot. That's all he is. So Tanner Pearson's a cheaper shot bot. He's just kind of there. The issue that I have is I don't know if he makes it the whole game, but he's min priced, right? So if Eichel scores a goal and he gets a secondary assist and has a a shot and a block, that's like 8 DK points, and you're chilling. It's similar to the Saad conundrum, where like, what is he actually doing there? It's probably not much. But at that price and this matchup, because that Thompson Cousins Zucker line, first of all, they had to break up Thompson, Tuck, and Zucker because they were so bad that they had to break it up. Now they have Thompson on the wing with Cousins at center. You know what I mean? Like, Buffalo's just searching. They're blowing leads. So I do like playing Vegas 1 here. And yeah, if you want to leave off Pearson and add in Hurdle or add in Olofsson for extra power play correlation, that's fine. It becomes more expensive. But if you're looking for an 18K line in the Columbus range, I think you leave Pearson there. Eichel and Stone pretty much can bring anyone to respectability. It was kind of like JT Miller and Besser last season. They bring anyone along for the ride. Like, Pearson just needs to hit the score sheet once and he's fine. I honestly don't mind Carlson, Hurdle, and Dorofeyev too at 14.3. They're a little bit negatively leveraged, but they're in that price range with Utah 1 and that Robertson line. I prefer the Robertson line just because they're coming in with less ownership, but like I don't mind Carlson and Hurdle. They played excellent together. It wasn't Dorofeyev there before, it was Kolesar. But adding Dorofeyev should help. So like I like the way that line looks. But it is a Vegas 1 game for me. I'm out on Buffalo. Like I have no faith that these lines are going to stick together. They're searching. They haven't won since Nam. I mean, they won once, but I'm out on Buffalo.
Yeah, I mean, if Jason Zucker gets another hat trick,
good for him.
I'll just kind of tip my cap and move along. But like, I have no interest in that Buffalo top line. I was looking. Tage Thompson has 14 shots in his last 10 games. Wondering like what the hell's going on here. Anyways, Buffalo 1. I'm out. I will say Cooley, Quinn, and Tuck is a little interesting only because they're 12,200, and as we were just talking about with Calgary or whatever, it's not a ton in that lower end price range that I really do like. And Kulik and Quinn have actually played well together. 65 shot attempts, 2.8 expected goals per 60. Now they're shooting 3%. They can ever turn that around. They'd actually be a pretty good scoring line. Like, Kulik is averaging 2 shots per game over his last 15 games, so he's getting involved. Quinn's on the top power play. I do think there are reasons to play Buffalo 2 here tonight. For me, it'd be more like if I was 20 maxing and needed, and I was spreading around a few cheaper lines, then I might get them in a single entry. I don't think I'm going to get there. This is a Vegas game. I'm at a loss of what to do with Vegas 1. I don't think Tanner Pearson does anything. I was speaking of tracking data that I was talking about a little bit earlier. There's only like 7 games tracked for Tanner Pearson. I think he hasn't made a high danger pass in any of them. Zone entry percentage below the elite team average. Like, okay, he was doing that with the 3rd and 4th lines, but like I said, there was, like, he didn't play well for Montreal. There was a reason why the Habs bottom 5 team in the league last year, just let him walk, and he only got to Vegas on a professional tryout. I don't have a lot of faith that he stays there, but like you said, he's only 2,500. Stone and Eichel are good enough to carry him. It's not like Buffalo's a tough matchup. So yeah, I really do like Vegas 1 here. I'd rather play them than Boston. I'd rather play them than Nashville. I'd rather play them than Toronto. I'd rather play them probably than Montreal. The problem I'm running into is that I still think I'd rather play Columbus. It's still Columbus is still a perfectly correlated line at home, but I have no issues playing Vegas 1 here. Like if Tanner Pearson was like 3,800, then I'd be like, well, I'm probably going to pass. But at min price, like it's kind of hard to say like it's a bad play, just considering where he is. So yeah, I really do like Vegas 1. Vegas 2 for me, I agree with you, is a little bit more interesting. Hurdle and Carlson, 80 minutes together this season, 81 shot attempts, 3.5 expected goals, 3 actual goals per 60 minutes. Hurdle's 26 shots in his last 10 games. Carlson typically gets good ice time, especially because he PKs. Dorofeyev scored in their last game. He's still skating like 15 to 16 minutes a game, even though he's not getting that top power play time anymore. He's still shooting at a reasonable clip. If you don't want to go play like a chalky Dallas or a chalky Calgary or something like in that price range, like this is still chalk, but it's only 8% ownership on that Vegas second line. I think if you need a line in that price range, this is one that I would certainly circle and heavily consider. But yeah, Vegas 1 is the best line in this game. Tanner Pearson, man, we'll see.
I would rather play Vegas 2 than either of the top 2 Calgary lines. Just because like chalk Calgary is just a mess. For
me. I agree with that for sure.
Yeah. Edmonton Oilers at a 3.6 total heading into Seattle. The Fighting Capocacos have a 2.8 total. God, Edmonton. So Edmonton started the game with Connor Brown on the top line. In the third period, they were running McDavid, Draisaitl, Hyman. They're back-to-back. We have no clue what the lines are going to be. Like, the thing with Edmonton, though, it doesn't really matter what the hell their lines are. McDavid and Draisaitl will play some together. McDavid and Hyman will play some together. This is a good power play matchup. Like, Seattle's penalty kill sucks. Sucks. Expected goals against over 10 on the penalty kill. Like, that's brutal. I just don't know what I want to do with Edmonton or whether I'd rather prioritize them. Like, I think I'd rather play the Jets. I think I'd rather play Colorado just because what the lines are going to be. They're going to get the power play time. Their power play has been good. Edmonton's power play really hasn't been great. I know they scored a power play goal yesterday, but it was Nugent Hopkins from Bouchard. Like, that might be the first Edmonton power play goal in history that both McDavid and Draisaitl weren't involved. So, I don't know what the lines are going to be. They're back-to-back on the road. It is a good power play matchup. So, if you want to do, McDavid, Draisaitl, McDavid, Nugent Hopkins, McDavid, Hyman, Draisaitl, Hyman, something like that is fine. But I have a hard time prioritizing them over Winnipeg or Colorado. So, for me, it would be just some sort of the power play guys. Seattle, they're interesting from the fact that all their lines fit with Colorado. And that's probably the only reason I find them super interesting. But Kakko, Beniers, and Schwartz has actually been really good together in their small sample. Kakko's on the top power play unit. Although the Dunn unit is technically better. Seattle's penalty kill sucks. Their power play sucks. Those guys are on the wrong unit. But they do get power play time. Kakko is only 3K. Beniers is only 40. Their most expensive line is 11,200. It's Beniers, Schwartz, Kakko. I don't mind them. I also don't mind the Bjorkstrand, Wright, Tolvanen line. 10K flat. I don't really want to play the Stevenson line. But you guys already know why. It would be, if you're playing Colorado or a super expensive power play stack, I don't mind Beniers, Kakko, Schwartz, or Bjorkstrand, Wright, Tolvanen. but I don't think I would outright prioritize them just because they're a top, quote unquote, top line at 11-2. So, they're in that basket for Colorado, and that's really about it.
So one of the reasons why I do have interest in Edmonton here tonight, one, you mentioned it's a good power play matchup. It is and it isn't. Seattle doesn't take a lot of penalties. That's the problem. Is they're at like 2 times short-handed per game over the last 5 weeks. They're one of the least penalized teams in the league over the entire season. So like Edmonton might only get 1-2 power plays here. Like that's a problem. The power play has been better since Hyman returned from injury. Certainly better than it was earlier in the season. I do think that's important. The other is, if you look at the ownership for the players, Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl around 7%, Nugent Hopkins under 4%, Bouchard around 3%, Hyman under 1%. When you have a 10-game slate and you can probably do some sort of like McDavid, Draisaitl, Nugent Hopkins stack, and it'll be like 1-2% owned against a Seattle Kraken team whose penalty kill is awful and who still is going with Philip Grubauer, that's where the interest comes in. Is like, this is going to be a very low-owned line, some sort of combination. Now, I do worry that they're going to stick Connor Brown on the top line, and then it's going to be a 1-1 game halfway through the second, and then they're going to kick Connor Brown off. So I would focus on the Edmonton power play guys. Again, I would have no problem playing Hyman. He only had 17 minutes the other night, but he had an assist with 3 shots or something like that. Obviously not a great night for his price. But like I said, this is still a very good power play matchup. This is another game where I would, if I'm stacking Edmonton, Draisaitl is the must. That Draisaitl Podkolzin line, over their last 20 games, 3.7 expected goals for, 3.8 actual goals for. That is legit like Edmonton 1, Toronto 1 type stuff. And earlier in the season, they were creating a lot. They just weren't finishing. Now they're finishing. So I do think like you can do some sort of broken stack if you want, like McDavid, Draisaitl, Arvidsson, McDavid, Draisaitl, Podkolzin, like those types of things. I think those are perfectly fine. I do have some interest in Edmonton here just because there's no ownership on them. And I would way rather play Edmonton than Tampa Bay here tonight. So like if I'm paying up and I want to avoid what's going to be a fairly chalky Colorado, I'd still rather play Winnipeg, but then after Winnipeg, it's probably Edmonton. On the Seattle side, they have been using that Beniers-Schwartz line more in a shutdown matchup. But Beniers and Schwartz have actually been pretty good together. 2.8 goals per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. It's at least above average, which is something Beniers lines haven't been very often over the last year and a half. Beniers has like 12 points in his last 15 games. Like if you're looking for a cheap filler, I think Beniers, Schwartz, and Kako is fine. At 0.6% top 2 stack, 0.8% ownership. They're probably the line that I would play. I'm not playing that Stevenson line. Every single Stevenson line sucks. Bjorkstrand, Wright, and Tolvanen, I think is fine. If you need even more savings, they are $1,200 cheaper, but it's a Beniers, Schwartz, Kako line that I do like best. I'm still debating whether or not I'm playing Edmonton here tonight. And the big reason is that it's a 3.6 total against a bad goalie and a bad penalty kill, and nobody's playing them. That kind of worries me.
Yeah, Joey Decourt is still out. So, like, at best, it's Philip Grubauer. Yeah, and low McDavid is stuff of nightmares. And he did burn a lot of people yesterday, so agreed there. Let's talk about some defensemen here. Cale Makar up to 8,700. Outside of prime Brent Burns, I don't think I remember a defenseman up that high. Werenski, 8,500. That's deserved, though. He's been an absolute bag of ham recently, and he's been playing over 26 to 30 minutes a night. Even with 11-7, the dude's going out 26 to 30. It's just absolute bonkers how much that guy plays. I do really like both of them. It is obviously hard it's like almost impossible to fit Colorado one with Makar. It's a bit easier to fit Columbus one with Werenski. I think Makar is more of a one-off type deal. I think Werenski is more of I'm playing Columbus. I want him to come along for the ride type of deal. I think Yossi's fine. Yossi's always fine. Jake's going, yeah, he is. But I don't mind him. Bouchard's in a good power play spot. I don't mind him. Victor Hedman's back, but 7K in that matchup's tough. I think if I'm going below Bouchard, I'm going all the way down to like Josh Morrissey and Shea Theodore. What are you thinking?
What I'm thinking is that Yossi hasn't had a 20-point DK game since November. He's better than what he's shown. I think I would probably rather play Werenski or Makar. The projections have Werenski ahead, but it's not by much. Both are eminently playable. Like if I'm paying over 7,500 for a defenseman tonight, I'm just playing Werenski or Makar. If you're 20 maxing, you get one or two Yossi, or 150, you get a handful of Yossi. I think it's fine, but I'd rather play Werenski or Makar. Mid price range, it's actually not a ton there that I like. Like obviously Josh Morrissey's fine in that home matchup. I think Mackenzie Weegar's okay. I've been burned by Weegar more than I think any other defenseman so far this season, though. So maybe it's just kind of bias coming in. The Vegas defensemen, Hannafin and Pietrangelo, both fine, depending on the salary you need. Obviously, Devin Taves is okay for Colorado in that home matchup. There are a lot of cheap defensemen, I think, that are very playable. If you're looking under 3K, Dmitry Orlov, obviously, for Carolina. Josh Manson, again, at home for Colorado. Nick Blankenberg, he played quite a bit last night for Nashville. He might have to again. So I think he's fine. Alex Carrier for Montreal, especially if David Savard is out, he might have to get some more minutes again. So I think Carrier is fine if you need a cheap defenseman. Scott Perunovich is running the top power play for St. Louis with Justin Falk out. Now, I don't really love playing a 15-minute defenseman just because he's getting some secondary power play time, but it's not like Columbus is great defensively, so I'll mention Perunovich. Cam Fowler got a ton of minutes last night with Falk out. I think it was like 20, almost 25 minutes. He's only 3,400 getting top power play time. I think he's a really good play. And I'll mention Thomas Harley. Feels like he should be doing a lot better than he is, but he's also only 3,900 and, at home against Utah, I think that's fine. But if I'm paying in that 3K range, I do think Fowler's at or near the top of the list.
Yep. Unfortunately, I don't love Fowler for DFS at all, but he has found the fountain of youth in his brief stay in St. Louis for some reason. He is good at the old stretch pass, and maybe that's why. Let's talk about some goalies here. I don't love paying up. I never do, but Connor Hellebuyck at 8K at home to Detroit sticks out like a sore thumb. If you want to go more expensive, I honestly don't have issue with Mackenzie Blackwood, especially if Line is out again. It is back-to-back on the road for Montreal. Ottinger's fine. Aiden Hill's fine, but honestly, if I'm spending up, it's Hellebuyck there. I don't mind Joey Woll. Goalies against Boston have been pretty lucrative this season, and he's also my highest exposed goalie on Best Puck. So I have to pump his horn there. Dustin Wolf.
You got the what?
You heard me. I definitely didn't mean to say that, but I'm sticking to it. Don't mind Dustin Wolf at 7,800. And if I'm going cheap, Gustafson at 7,300 definitely sticks out. Vejmelka's interesting because he's been really good this season, and Dallas has a big total. But I don't mind him at 7,100. I prefer him over the Seattle goalie at 7K for sure. And probably over Jacob Dobes at 6,900. I know he shut out the Panthers, but this is a little bit different here. I guess he's fine if you want to take a chance at him, but really, I don't really want to go below Vejmelka.
Yeah, the top projected goalie as of right now is Kochetkov for Carolina, just a shade above Hellebuyck. But Kochetkov also has the 7th lowest projected save total. So it's one of those maybe he saves 20 saves 23 out of 24 or something like that. But if Minnesota gets a lucky bounce and all of a sudden it's 21 out of 23 or something, I do worry about that. I think Hellebuck for the expensive goalie makes a lot of sense. I do think Joseph Woll makes a lot of sense at home against Boston. I hate saying it, but I'm not super worried about Boston filling the net tonight. God, knock on wood. Dustin Wolf, 7,800 at home against Nashville. I think those are the three goalies I'm really looking at in the, more expensive range: Hellebuck, Woll, and Wolf. Cheaper goalies, like I do think Gustafsson is interesting on the road in Carolina. I do worry a little bit about shot volume there, but as long as Minnesota doesn't fall apart on the PK, again, knock on wood, I think Gustafsson could have a decent night. Andre Vasilevsky, I know like he hasn't been great this season, but 7,500 against the Kings. The Kings don't have a massive total. The Kings don't typically score a ton of goals. I think Vasilevsky in that 7,500 is fine. Last guy I'll mention is Justice Inouye at 7,600. He's been okay this season for Nashville. It's more that, Calgary can score. I don't have a ton of confidence that they'll pump like 6 on 29 shots against them or something like that. So I do think he's fine. There's not a lot in like the super, super cheap price range that I necessarily want to play. Like UPL, Vemelka, like I guess they're okay, but that's kind of it, I think. And I think on a 10-game slate, I'm not super into playing a Buffalo goalie on the road in Vegas.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. We are going to be busy next week. It's quite possible you'll see us every day next week. So if you are into bearded men, you're in luck. We'll be here a lot. Who are you liking for your hat trick pick?
It's funny, just kind of slandered the team like a minute ago, but I'm going to go Nazem Kadri.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to have back problems when he gets off Calgary. He's been carrying that team for a few years. I am going Tomas Hertl.
Late game special.
Yeah, and quick party, if he had a hat trick pick, he would go Johnny Drouin. It is narrative street for Johnny Drouin back in playing Montreal, but, just want to throw that out there for him. Good luck, everybody, tonight. I'm going to go do some stuff with Joe Woll's horn or something. I don't know. But we'll see you on Monday, and good luck, everybody.
Good luck tonight, everyone.